and my party thought otherwise, because, you know, I have something called a conscience, which speaks to me about what I think is right and wrong. So about the president is absolutely correct, 100%. I couldn't agree with the president of Kenya more than on this issue of the International Criminal Court. It was a scandal from beginning to end that Mr. Uhuru Kenyatta and Mr. Ruto were taken there. We Africans have to wake up and smell the tea, as it were, that we need to create our own institutions. We need to create our own independent institutions. You know, not the voodoo judiciary of Kenya, but an independent, an independent institution with independent judges. You know, we have judges who have the same character, and mind us, Lady Justice Mogure Thande, who speaks her mind and acts in a way that is commensurate with the magistrate of the law. Those are the kinds of people we want in the institutions of law. The institutions that are going to stand up for Africans and say, General Burhan, Hemeti, you are criminals who have destroyed this country. We're going to arrest you and put you in front of a court of law. It will stop all the other presidents in this continent from doing these kinds of shenanigans. Secondly, Debal, I want to agree with my learned friend on the left that the International Criminal Court is a racist institution. If it were not, it would have brought Benjamin Netanyahu, the Prime Minister of Israel, to the docks. His soldiers were shooting journalists in Gaza. Forget about what has happened in Jenin. You can see what they're doing in the West Bank. You can see what the Burmese are doing there. You can see the United Arab Emirates using terrorism here in Somalia. Nobody is going to say that the Emir of the United Arab Emirates should be brought into the International Criminal Court. Debal, this is the kind of upside-down thinking that we Africans oppose. It's high time we created our own institutions. I give the president an A+ on signing the Malaba Convention.
Debal, the international programs and universal was started to do good things for everyone. Whether it was the League of Nations, whether it's United Nations, whether it's many branches like ICC and all others, ILO, all others. The question is practice over a period of time. Who do you focus on? Who's the audience? And in this case, apart from Nuremberg trial, ICC has failed. Yes. Particularly the third world country, or what we call the South, by focus only on the South and particularly on Africa. Yep. The question, the major question, Debal, is we should not start our own to be able to save the criminals in Africa, like Taylor. And now they are emerging from all over the place. We should not. That institution should not be immune, create immune to criminals who are leaders, who are not accountable to the continent. So what yardstick will you use to make sure that you follow universal principle and that it really bring people to law? Like our friend Hasi has said, it's going to be tricky, Debal. It's going to be tricky for us here in Africa. So let's not just sidestep ICC very, very quickly, but be able to bring enough voice to change ICC so that we have a multi-world with Africans have significant say.
All right. Peter Kagoja.
Let me start by declaring that the ICC is dead. You can only revive it, I don't know through which voodoo or magic. It's dead, yeah, because it is dead, because the intention for which it was created is finished. Just the way the League of Nations died, we will have to have a new protocol establishing another International Criminal Court, the way we established the United Nations after the death of the League of Nations. Why did the League of Nations die? Because members of the League of Nations watched as Italy used gas against the Ethiopians and used gas elsewhere. So and then Haile Selassie went there and talked to them and just looked at him like he was a monkey. A jackal eating sugarcane. So it died, and in our mind it never existed. Now the ICC has been weaponized. It is no longer a court. It is a political instrument for the mighty. Now look at it. It was used in Libya to destroy the African country. Instead of indicting those who are real perpetrators, the French, the Americans, this is the greatest indictment to the great Obama. Libya, they took Gaddafi, his children, and members of his family, and that's it. It was indicted in Cote d'Ivoire. This was a local case, and it was stopped on its track by Thabo Mbeki and Mahamoud Mamdani and other African scholars who said courts cannot arbitrate this. And in Kenya, we ran with it, and it humiliated us. It took our sovereignty. We had basically to fight back. And now that we are free, I am with the president on this. If there is a second signature that is needed, appeal it, Mr. President. If there is a third one needed, appeal it. Because at the firing line here is our sovereignty as a people. It's our freedom as a people. And we don't want to subject our sovereignty to some governing system. Now, the Maraba Protocol does not in any way violate international law. The NGOs and other busybodies that are now moving to criticize the Maraba Protocol don't understand who we are as Africans. We have been slaves, we have been colonized, and we have been neo-colonized, if you want to talk about the French. Today, Niger give money 80% of its income to France, and then get only 20% of it through loan. No, not as a grant, as a loan, which has a tax in it. I have never seen that kind of a slavery. So what is the point? The Maraba Protocol extends the jurisdiction of the international law into the yet to be established African court in order to try 14 crimes, including genocide, crime against humanity, and war crimes. Correct. So it will be trying those. And I agree. I want to conclude by concurring with him. If we turn the Maraba Protocol into the protection of criminals within our own jurisdiction, then we are also going to kill the African Court of Law.
Absolutely.
So what we are trying to protect is our sovereignty, not to protect our criminals.
All right. I think we are done and dusted as far as the Maraba Protocol is concerned, and the president signing that act that will offer him immunity against ICC moving forward. But the rights groups are raising scruples with this. Let's turn turn the conversation right now to what is happening around us as well, where our West African countries and global powers hope there is still a window of opportunity for mediation with Niger's coup leaders before a Thursday summit that will be happening tomorrow that could agree on military intervention to restore democracy. The Economic Community of West African State, or that is West African State, ECOWAS, has scheduled the summit to discuss its standoff with Niger junta, which seized power on July the 26th and ignored an August the 6th deadline to stand down. The coup leaders have vowed to resist external pressure to reinstate ousted President Mohamed Bazoum after ECOWAS imposed sanctions and Western allies suspended aid. The seventh power grab in West and Central Africa in 3 years has attracted global attention, partly due to Niger's pivotal role in a war with Islamist militants and its uranium and oil reserves that gives it economic and strategic importance for the United States. Let's just discuss this as we even run the pictures as well. This latest development, everyone is keeping their eyes peeled. We'll hear also from the Secretary of State of United States, that is Blinken, on Niger, where he talks about this particular instability as well. But let's just begin from you.
Dibal, first of all, we should condemn all coups without any exception. But the way the response from ECOWAS and at the behest of some Western states on what has happened in Niger is leaving a lot of doubts about the intentions of ECOWAS and some of these neocolonizers. Professor Kagwanja, Hashi, and Professor Midamba has been talking about. Why Niger? Why is it that there is mobilization of West African armies to go and invade Niger after the coup? Why didn't anyone mobilize against Libya, not Egypt, when the army took over? The reason why Niger is a point of contention here is because some country in the West is going to lose a lot of resources. Has been messing up this country, has been just stealing from this country, and because the generals who have taken power there have decided that resources, Niger resources remain in Niger, are now having trouble about this kind of decision. The second point here is ECOWAS, and I think it's Tinubu, the Nigeria's president, that was pushing for the military invasion of Niger. They gave Niger only 7 days to try and to return power back to to civilian authorities, and that if that was not going to happen, they were going to go into Niger. Which army or group of armies from countries can take only 7 days to plan for war or to go and return up? It's impossible. This tells you that this war on Niger has actually been planned for the last 2 years. It didn't start the other day. And there are extra regional powers that are pushing for an invasion of Niger. It is not ECOWAS. ECOWAS is just being promised money and to put their boots in Niger and to go and spill blood in Niger.
But who's promising the money?
It is the West, of course.
France.
And the Americans.
So let us. Nigerian Senate has actually, which is the only authority that can authorize the president to deploy the military, has actually rejected ECOWAS way of doing things, and they've said no. Go and talk to the coup plotters, to those who are now holding power. Do not deploy the military, because it's going to create problems across the Sahel. Already Sahel, which is now the coup belt from Mali all the way to Sudan, is so problematic. There is a resurgence of extremists, Al-Qaeda, Daesh, and others. And on top of that, these guys want to invade Niger. It's going to create a lot more problems than they are trying to resolve. And therefore, what should be done is actually to go and talk and engage. But there are structural issues, very fundamental structural issues that should be addressed. And this is about the economy, it's about politics, about security of the former French colonies.
All right. Let's hear from Ahmed Hashim.
Dubal, I think that it is very important for the intellectual elite of this region and of Africa to be absolutely clear and blunt to the people of this continent about what is happening. And last night I was reading something by someone who I believe should be given the Nobel Prize in Literature, together with our famous Ngugi wa Thiong'o, who's been overlooked for so long. And this is Edward Said.
But we had Professor Naomi Damba, when he was Vice Chancellor of KZ University, also offering a honorary degree to Professor Ngugi wa Thiong'o.
Ngugi wa Thiong'o is probably one of the most brilliant people, and yesterday he concurred with me, unlike him, my dear learned teacher on the right there, Conrad, who's the author of Into the Dark, the Heart of Darkness. Ngugi wa Thiong'o called him a great writer because of the way he writes. That is what I was referring to when my teacher over there disagreed with me. But if Ngugi wa Thiong'o agrees with me, I'll take it. Now, I want to read this. This is really important. A very serious note. So Edward Said says that every empire tells itself and the world that it is unlike all other empires, that its mission is not to plunder and control, but to educate and liberate. Every empire does that. Yesterday, the hawkish right-wing conservative Undersecretary of State of the United States, Nuland, the one who was protesting in Ukraine's capital, Kiev, together with the ambassador, and saying that Yanukovych, I think that's his name, Yanukovych, the guy who was supported by President Putin, and where they staged a coup d'etat in a foreign country, was with these young men in Niger. And she was offering them options on how to stop the coup. She was telling them what the Americans wanted. Debal, none of us here, and
That's the Deputy Secretary of State.
None of us here agree that there should be a coup d'etat in any country in Africa. We don't agree with that. It's obviously, it's just an obvious statement. But about what happens after the election, you're elected, and you don't keep your promises, and you sell out the people, you sell out the country, and you kowtow to the powers that be, and you become the errand boy of the West. You sell the minerals at a cheap price to the Europeans. You do not provide bread and butter for your people. When a coup d'etat happens, then, isn't there legitimacy for it? Isn't there? Debal, these same French people who are telling us and the Americans that this coup d'etat is illegal, supported the one in Chad. They supported it completely. They didn't say one word about it. They supported the same coup in Egypt. Remember that, Debal, in the spring, when they overthrew the party that was generally elected by the people? But they didn't agree with the choice of the people of Egypt. So what did they do? They said, oh, this is a good coup. So, Debal, there's good coups and there's bad coups. So we shouldn't also be, hairy-eyed about it. We should call out what is happening in West Africa. What is happening in West Africa, Debal, is a general insurrection of the people of West Africa against their exploitation and their continued rule by French and European interests under the umbrella of the American government. The American government can speak about values of human rights, democracy on its State Department website, but they know when to send Nuland to do demonstrations in Kiev and to go and talk to these young men about Niger. Niger is not poor. Debal, it's a lie. It's at the very bottom of the table of contents about who is poor in this world. It is one of the richest countries in the world, Debal. It has had one of the richest civilizations in this world, Debal. It had universities and under the empires of Mansa Musa and Abu Bakr II, well before the Pilgrims landed on Plymouth Rock in North America. Debal, history kind of provides us a clear view of what is right and wrong because we have 2020 vision. Debal, I put it to you that not only is there an insurrection in North Africa, the insurrection is coming all the way down to sub-Saharan Africa and it's going to go all the way to South Africa. Simply because of three things, Debal. That we elect people who give promises to the people and they go and lie about it, then they go and loot these countries and they ally themselves with those who want to exploit it. The army, which is a very reactionary force, sometimes has leftists. In Burkina Faso, it has come with leftists. It has come with the leftists in Mali. It has come with leftists in other places, and they are saying, no, we're not going to allow for there to be this exploitation, even though this person is elected. I think that the coup, which has broad support, nearly 99% of the people of the Sahel supported. Debal, I predicted the coup d'etat in Niger on this table 2 months before it happened. It's on tape. Political economy, Debal, is an essential tool in analyzing what is going to happen. I put it to you lastly, Debal, that the great Frantz Fanon said that decolonization is always a violent affair. It is always a violent affair, and it seems that there's a new decolonization going on in West Africa. I want the government of the people, by the people, and for the people. But we don't want a government that lies about the people, lies for the people, and presents itself as a charlatan or as a tart to the powers that be today in modern history.
All right, let's hear from Nomi Damba.
Debal, the world is very unsettled right now. And Africa, most likely, Africa is the most weakest link and is going to get the brunt of the ugliness of what's going on. So the war between Ukraine and Russia is not that simple. It is a war that perhaps is unwinnable, and it's a war that will probably degrade Russia significantly down the ladder, and China will win in some ways and lose in some ways. But proxy war is going to happen in Africa, whether it is leaning toward China or leading toward the US or leading toward Russia. And what we don't want to see, based on what my friend is saying, is to see the Wagner group running a country. Because I said the other day on this channel, they're the worst of the worst. They're the scum of this earth. And they will turn ashes into whatever it is. And nothing good will come out of it. The misery is all what is going to take. It is the time, Mustafa, that Africa take count of what's coming down. And if we cannot reinforce AU to be our pillar of protection for this country, if we cannot create structure within ourselves such that we can govern ourselves with dignity and respect, because I believe in the bottom of my heart that the soldiers does not belong in the State House. They're disciplined forces. They have a different mission. We teach them. These are warriors. In my study, in my teaching, we teach them to kill. That's what the soldiers are, based on what Colonel Powell, General Powell said. And therefore, number one, we need really professional mediators. The best one, really, that came from this continent was Nelson Mandela. If you want to research mediators, he's on top. And then we have Tony Blair, represent Britain for a long time. Ralph Banche was one of the most outstanding mediators. We need more in Africa. And Obasanjo is playing a role. We need to get Kenyatta involved. We need to get retired presidents, all these retired presidents, all together to do mediator. Because you don't go to a war. You don't go to a war fast. You mediate fast. And then war is the last resort. I respect what ECOWAS is doing. I respect the stand they're making from the pillar of the West African pillar. We need that pillar to work. We need it to work in the East Africa. We need to work in North Africa. We need to work in South Africa. But let's be serious about restructuring ourselves so that we can govern ourselves.
Indeed. Right. Before we go to Peter Kagwanja, so you can chime in still on the same topic, we have Russia's Wagner mercenary groups is taking advantage of instability. This is what U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken, who spoke to BBC, said the country has been ruled by a junta following the ousting of President Mohamed Bazoum nearly 2 weeks ago. Let's just listen in to what he had to say.
For sure, we have concerns when we see something like the Wagner Group possibly manifesting itself in different parts of the Sahel. And here's why we're concerned. Because every single place that this group, Wagner Group, has gone, death, destruction, and exploitation have followed. Insecurity has gone up, not down. It hasn't been a response to the needs of the countries in question for greater security. I think what happened and what continues to happen in Niger was not instigated by Russia or by Wagner, but to the extent that they try to take advantage of it, and we see a repeat of what's happened in other countries where they brought nothing but bad things in their wake, that wouldn't be good.
All right, so Peter Kagwanja, the presence of Wagner, we saw his leader really also lauding this particular coup. And now we're here again talking about Wagner and its tentacles within Africa. Some of his forces that are controlling Wagner. Can we maybe unveil who is steamrolling and who called on Wagner to go to Niger? Because we understand, of course, they didn't just go out there out of their own volition.
No, I applaud the honesty and sincerity of the U.S. Secretary of State, because when he says that Wagner did not start the conflict in Niger and the coups in other French-speaking countries. Now, everybody is talking about the return of the coups in Africa, which is really not correct. It's not the return of the coups. It is actually a revolution against the French. The coups are in Mali, Burkina Faso, Benin, Guinea, and Niger, and Chad. Those are the countries. The only exception is Sudan. And the reason is fundamental. And why Niger is now at the center of the global focus, to the point that the Secretary of State need to comment on this. He needed to be more sincere than he is. The problem with Niger is uranium. Niger controls 5% of the total world uranium, right? And 90% of that uranium is controlled by French multinationals, right? One French multinational, and there are about 2 or 3 mines of uranium, the highest quality in the world. That's what we know. And that this uranium, all of it, is the one that has been used to turn France from a third world country into a superpower. It is the one that they are using to write. And that's why France can audaciously stand up against Russia. So this now looks like a standoff between Russia and France. Why? Because it's all about energy. It's about energy because France is backstopping itself with uranium from Africa in order to undercut Russian oil and gas supply to Europe, right? So it's a war that is between France or European Union and Russia. And therefore, when Wagner comes in, they're basically also now backstopping this coup in Niger, which is now, I mean, the French would want to overthrow this guy as quickly as they can. But their military has been weakened by the Islamists in the north and the ethnic wars in That's why France had to withdraw from Mali, because they were losing their boys. And now we need to protect Niger. For me, I don't believe in the concept of good and bad coups, but this is not a coup. This is the liberation of Niger. And ECOWAS need to watch its steps.
Correct.
I mean, Nigeria needs to be very careful about what it's doing.
Correct.
That it is not an instrument of neo-colonial domination of the continent. Now, I have nothing against France. I have more friends in France than anywhere else. But evil is evil. Slavery is slavery. Neocolonialism is colonialism and colonialism. France needed to craft a new plan of dealing with Africa. Even its fellow European countries are accusing it. They cannot tolerate that inhumanity. Italian Prime Minister the other day won herself a lover in Africa in the form of Museveni's son, who said he's ready to pay all number of cows to marry her or to get her if she is not married, because of the statement she made about French and neo-colonial control of Africa. I think neo-colonial is the right word. We need to just, it is basically extortion of Africa, the new slavery of the Africa. And Africa need to stand with the the French-speaking countries, Senegal, Mali, Burkina Faso, Benin, Guinea, Chad, Ivory Coast, and Niger. They are not decolonized. They are still colonial powers.
All right. We need to wind up on that, so we move on to other stories as well, unless you have anything.
I just want to add something to
please.
Mr. Gwanja. The great tradition of the Algerian government and its people to support the causes of Africa, its continent, was yesterday displayed by its president. I just want to commend him. The Algerian government has issued a warning that any Western incursion into Niger will pour the Algerian army into Niger to defend the people of that country. This is an unprecedented warning to the Europeans. And Algeria is not a small-time banana republic, Debal. It's one of the largest countries in Africa, and it has got one of the strongest militaries. So it's not going to be a walkover. You remember, Debal, that the Algerian people are the ones who kicked out the French out of Algeria. You remember that? And it's great, the great theoretician of the Algerian Revolution, Frantz Fanon, Debal has spoken about this tradition of North Africa and its contribution to the struggle of emancipating our continent from these kinds of exploitation. So we here together want to tell the Algerian people and its government, asanteni sana for having something called cojones. Thank you very much.
All right, so we want to move on to our neighbor Rwanda here, and following, of course, the victim of, not really the victim, but the culprit of the genocide, that is Felician Kabuga, and the latest development that we have from there as well. If you may just roll up the audio for me, I'll be happy, where we have a group representing survivors of the Rwandan genocide on Tuesday expressed anger and disappointment at the UN Appeal Court ruling that a suspect should be urgently considered for release after he was declared unfit for trial. The Ibuka Association representing survivors slammed the decision in the case of former business tycoon Felician Kabuga, accused of setting up a hate broadcaster that fueled the 1994 slaughter of around 800,000 people. The ruling to potentially release Kabuga is a deliberate insult to the deep wounds that genocide survivors suffer. That is what Naftali Ahi Shakir, who is executive secretary of the group, told the AFP. We just want to talk about this. Now we have that particular development. We've been eagerly waiting. First of all, he was a fugitive, nowhere to be seen. Then finally he's caught somewhere in Belgium, or was it France? And now he's taken to the courts, but now the court says he can't really stand trial on matters of unfitness because he's suffering from dementia. So how do we deal with that? It's a whole of a dilemma.
Yeah, you know, Ash was just exchanging notes with myself just here now. The Nuremberg trials did not stop. And I just saw last year, or was it a few days ago, a 90-something-year-old being tried and jailed. Somebody who was clearly suffering
from dementia.
More than dementia.
So
what is this with
Felician Kabuga?
Who and that person who was the Nuremberg was just a sympathizer or did something very small. What about people who masterminded the massacre of Rwandese people? I don't want to say what tribe or the other, but just the Rwandese people. I think these courts need to be more serious. And this is exactly what we are saying, you know, when the president is signing the Malabo protocol, you know, and we support this kind of progress because these courts have become just a laughing stock.
Because I thought this will be the epitome.
Yes.
And everyone would, the epitome actually of watching to see what ICC will do, especially for a person who has been, pointed to be the person who bankrolled, steamrolled genocide in Rwanda. This will be the ultimate, particular showcasing point for the ICC on how they're going to execute a man who is the face of genocide in the world.
This is the double standards we've been talking about. My learned friend on the left is very right about the Nuremberg trials. The thing about Mr. Kabuga is that he was a French agent. And if they put him to court, he'll say what the French told him. That's what the French don't want, because the French were deeply involved in the genocide in Kigali. It's just a fact, Abal, it's very important for people to be blunt. We have no business coming here if we don't tell the people of this. The great Amilcar Cabral, probably one of the greatest sons of this continent, said, tell no lies and claim no easy victories. We cannot tell lies when we come here to the people of this continent and to our region. Our politicians here who don't have a spine may do that, but I am a son of a chief. I cannot do that. Good. This man was harbored here in Nairobi, Hurlingham, by the Kenya government at the request of French intelligence. And when he went over there, they powdered him with a beard and put him in an apartment and waited for him to be 99 years old. Then they would bring him up in front of the people and say, he's not fit for trial. We're not stupid. We went to school, we know how to read and write now. And these Europeans are not going to come here and tell us these lies and double speak while we know what has been happening. I think that the Kigali government should break off diplomatic relations with France tomorrow morning. And they should condemn what is happening in there. And I put it to you that I hear the government of Rwanda watches this show. If Mr. Paul Kagame has any set of those things, he should break off diplomatic relations. Otherwise, he agrees with what has happened. In fact, this is an insult to the memory of those 1 million Tutsis who are murdered there at the instigation of the French Republic. And this is the cause that has been happening in everywhere in Africa, where groups have been divided, they have been poisoned against each other, and then fought against each other because of this nonsense. And it is time a new leadership emerges out of Africa that rejects all this.
So he was in a rabbit hole actually to wait to suffer of dementia.
Well, Ahmed Has is right on this, and I agree with Ahmed on a number of things. The law must take care of its course. The dead are gone, and they died in the worst possible way. And for the world, and for their citizens, for their descendants, to be happy and accept what outcome of what has happened. You cannot just seal the guy and say, oh no, now he cannot talk. He has dementia. We cannot try. The man has to be tried. And so the outcome depends on what, it is the court who's going to make judgment on the outcome. And so the Jewish people are hunting the genocide from Hitler. Mm-hmm. Yeah, their grandchildren are hunting them until they find them wherever they are hiding. And therefore, we cannot accept that in Africa.
Mm-hmm. So we need to speak out regarding this development.
Yeah, we cannot.
It's been a workahol. He's appearing somewhere. Oh, it's not Felician Kabuga. No. Oh, he's an imposter. We've shown also investigative investigation here, or investigative journalism as well. We thought it was Felician Kabuga. It wasn't. And finally, he's caught. Then he's suffering from dementia. So maybe within the remit of the legal framework, you're not actually supposed to put someone in trial who's suffering dementia or who's schizophrenic, because then how do you articulate? You're not actually able to defend yourself. So how do we handle this dilemma?
No, then the whole idea is to hide people until they get the dementia.
That's what I'm saying. You hide them as a way he's putting it.
Inject some.
You remember this is the
causing insulin or something.
the Manchurian. What was the Manchurian injection?
We do know that if I am a lawyer and I'm standing for my client and I know he's guilty as charged, what I would like to do is to start putting handles on the way by saying, well, he was coerced. If that cannot stand, then I say he's not in the sane mind to stand trial, or he has this. You look for all the excuses. Listen to this on a lighter note. When the British wanted to prosecute Polish refugees who are in Uganda for violating the rule that you cannot have a relationship with Africans, they invented something called feeble-minded as a disease.
Feeble-minded.
Feeble-minded. And therefore, since you are feeble-minded and you cannot be tried in a formal court, then they set up a station somewhere in Taveta.
Brilliant.
And they put all the Polish people there because they are feeble-minded.
Yes.
Why? Because they had boyfriends among blacks. And these are innocent Polish girls who came in their teens and have matured in Africa.
Second World
and
War.
you are looking for Second World War, and you are looking for suitors. And they are no whites. Who do you have? But because in East Africa, as a white, you cannot marry a white, a black, it is going to undermine the very ideological basis of whiteness.
Very good.
Then you create a new disease category called feeble-minded. And on the basis of feeble-minded, Polish girls were persecuted. They were interned in Taita Taveta for decades until they were rescued by refugees and taken to Canada, Australia, and elsewhere. Now, this is what we are seeing here. Kabuga is feeble-minded because he has been wherever. I mean, the Europeans are very good in conjuring up excuses and reasons in order to escape justice. Kabuga needs to start trial. Kagame need to take this as his trial. No, this is his Waterloo.
Yeah, we will know.
Yeah, this is his Waterloo.
Kagame's Waterloo.
Kagame, yes. If Kabuga is not tried, then there can never be justice in Rwanda for centuries.
Yeah.
Because he has been the single symbol of the perpetration of genocide.
Yeah.
So I don't see the French here because they are predictable with their feeble-minded conjuring.
What Kagame is going to do
but
is very
for
important.
Kagame, what Kagame is going to do is what is more important.
So this is
to
his
us.
moment.
This is
we shall
Kagame's
see.
moment.
Okay. Mustafa, you may remember the Manchurian candidate as
Yes.
well.
Yes.
And the way they were actually wiping off and slitting off the memories of the victims that they wanted to use in espionage as well. Could this also be the case that Ahmed Ashi is proffering here, that you put him away, beard him up, so that he's looking like someone else? You can't actually recognize his Felician Kabuga. We don't know what they've done to Kabuga at the end of the day. It could be the same case that now he's suffering dementia, but is it an instigated dementia where they wipe off your memory?
I want to believe it is in this case. This is an instigated dementia. Why do I say so? Is we just need to look at the history. We need to look at how racists within the European establishment have been partaking and undertaking their activities in Africa. And we see that, what we're seeing in Niger. We see Professor Kagwenja said, what we are seeing, those are not coups. Those are, an insurrection against neocolonialism and the continued subjugation of the former French colonies in particular. I will not be surprised that this is an instigated dementia. And the fact that this man eluded capture for so long, in public, in full view of the glare of the public. He wasn't really hiding as we are meant to believe. Kabuga was not hiding. Kabuga was being protected. And if you're going to be protecting terrorists like Kabuga, by people who are supposed to be respected, then there's a lot we are still going to see a lot of challenges, particularly in Africa. And as Professor said, this is Kagame's moment. They have to seek out Kabuga, and this man has to answer to the genocide of 1 million Tutsis and moderate Hutus that he masterminded their killing.
So everyone is watching at the scale of justice, because we've been waiting for donkey years to see where it will actually tip. And this is a moment as well. If it will going to tip in favor of Kabuga, the world is going to take a special umbrage on that. But if on medical grounds as well as is being proffered, we'll be still waiting and feeling that justice was not really served. That will be a travesty.
Of course, the Manchurian Candidate is probably the top 10 films in the world in history. And there's one line in the Manchurian Candidate, which says that, his mind was not washed. It was dry cleaned.
Kabuga has been dry cleaned.
So the question is, has he been washed or dry cleaned?
So he's,
we want to know.
Well, maybe the president of Uganda should use my quote. I have nothing more to say.
Maybe we needed a second opinion as far as this dementia is concerned. So that the world over,
the point is,
there should be a peer review on that.
Granted that it is there, the question is, where did it come from? Because in Africa, people of Kabuga's age don't get dementia. In fact, dementia is not very well.
They get married at that age.
I mean, our fathers,
get married.
Our grandfathers
get married at that age.
This is the time they wrote their will.
Yes.
Yeah. and Mzee Kibor was actually advising us on marital issues.
He was not dry
the men's conference as well.
Because he was not dry cleaning.
Yeah.
So this is not.
There's no dry cleaning.
Not dry cleaning.
This dry cleaning of Kabuga so that he cannot start trial. And there are two crimes in this. One, of course, is the fact that you are trying to defeat justice by creating somebody as having dementia. The second is that you are trying to conceal information that he had before he was dry cleaned.
Absolutely.
You see, so whoever is doing that, whether it's a French or whoever is doing that, is basically defeating the cause of justice. Yeah. So it's not about Kabuga standing in and that being pushed there to stand. He's being whatever. We need the truth. Not only the truth, we need consequences for genocide. Yeah. And the singular symbol for genocide in Rwanda is Kabuga. Yep. I remember here in Kenya, Bichuki, being very critical about, we need to get these people out. I mean, he cannot stay here because it's not in our character to have these kind of people here. This is what most of the leaders were saying. And there was a lot of pressure from French and others to have Kabuga stay here quietly, but the quietness could not be tolerated by the Kenyans. That's why he's not here. So he had to move to another country. And finally, he now appears demented and unable to stand trial.
What a scandal.
What a scandal.
What a scandal. What a scandal. We need to wind up right now. Let's just begin with you, Dr. Mustafa, your closing remarks briefly.
Yeah, I think, Dibal, I want to say this: the Africa Union should be more watchful than it ever has been today. The insurrections that we are seeing across the Sahel is going to cause a lot of problems. And if we are going to allow extra regional powers to come in and dictate what needs to be done in the Sahel, I think we're going to lose it. And as it is, we have these regional conflict complexes coming together. The Sahel is now together with the Horn, is together with the Greater Lakes conflict, a regional insecurity complex, and that is going to cause a major challenge to the entire African continent if all these conflicts are not resolved in their own regions. The African leaders, and I can see President Ruto is taking a major, or rather is moving in this direction, have to continuously push the African Union to take decisions, firm decisions against imperialism, against racism, and against double standards that we are seeing around the world.
Thank you. Ahmed Hashim.
Debal, I want to remember the victims of the genocide of Rwanda. And I want to tell the people of Africa and the people in Rwanda in particular that we must never forget, and it must never be done again, and we must be very vigilant about it, simply because you could see what the Europeans think about us by what they have done with that criminal Kabuga. And the government and the people of Rwanda should not rest until justice is brought to Mr. Kabuga. Thank you.
Right, let's hear from Professor Nomidamba.
Dibal, President Ruto, in his cabinet, blocked some of the cabinet members that did not come in time for a meeting. A very good indication, and we are proud as Kenyans to see all of that. Kenya has a lot of stake. Kenya is one of the leading economy in the continent of Africa. We developed infrastructure development, education system. We cannot afford to go back. And therefore the president needs to discipline his people. They need to have KPI that work, that they report regularly to Kenya. And we need to see him have embraced governance, the kind of thing that Kibaki did, in order for us to continue the development and deal with the socio-economic issues we are facing.
Right. Finally, Peter Kagwanja.
I think we need to commend the president for doing his work. He has done it well. I think in the 1 year that is gone, the thing that he has done best is to take his responsibility to protect lives of Kenyans, to protect the property of Kenyans. That he has done well. There are naysayers to that, and this is where the debate about those who died in the demonstrations is coming in. But we do recommend that he took charge. He also took charge to get Kenyans talking, and Kenyans start talking today. I think what he needs now to do next is to maintain public hygiene in terms of the debates we are having, ensure that his people hone the art of communication, the art of mediation. It is not about calling names, it's about talking about issues that matter to us as Kenyans. And when we are poor, when we are facing the poverty we are facing, we cannot keep on talking about hustlers and dynasties. We can only talk about Kenyans. I know the people in Mount Kenya are saying by 2027 we don't want hustlers in Mount Kenya. We want some middle class, something closer to dynasty. Nobody wish themselves to be poor so that you can be called hustler. We want those who are rich in Mount Kenya. And therefore, these talks are important because they are about our future. And let Kenya talk.
All right, let Kenya talk. That is what is going to be happening today at the Bomas of Kenya at 11:30. Make sure, of course, you tune into KT News 2, where we will be doggedly following this for you, and where everyone has been waiting for them to come on the table to discuss the political trajectory of the country. And we hope this will move the needle even a jot higher to where we have been so far in a stalemate. So I want to thank you very much. And of course, also, we hope the president of Rwanda as well has listened to what the panelists have been saying regarding the travesty of justice for the people of Rwanda, especially where genocide is concerned. And as Martin Luther said, the threat of justice anywhere is the threat of justice everywhere. And so we want to thank you so very much for your valued company, Global Today. You've been watching. See you next week with the same panelists.